Rough game. Well, I'm sure we all know who Crash Bandicoot is, the mascot of the PS1 era whose game is pretty much playable anywhere at this point. Back when I looked back and played Crash 4, that video can be found here, I said I would get to Crash 1 before the end of the year. Well, I'm here to deliver. Hello everyone and welcome back. My name's Argonaut, and in this video we're going to be talking about Crash 1 from the Sane Trilogy. I never actually owned Crash 1, and I don't emulate my games, and finding a used copy of Crash 1 would have cost a little bit more than I would have liked. Maybe at some point in the future I'll buy a Crash 1 disc and talk about it, but for now, we're going to use the Sane Trilogy version to talk about Crash 1's history, sales, gameplay, and my thoughts on it. But before all that, if you like this video and want to see more like it, feel free to click that subscribe button to keep up with the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And with that little bit of shameless promotion out of the way, on with the video. Back in January 5th of 1994, Universal Studios formed Universal Interactive Studios, a branch of the company created for developing and publishing video games. And while being on the hunt for developers to create games for the new branch at the Consumer Electronics Show for that year, they happened to have a booth set up across from a small dev team I'm not sure you've heard of before called Naughty Dog, who was busy displaying their newest game at the time called Way of the Warrior, as they were currently looking for a publisher themselves. Impressed by this, Universal made a bid for them along with the 3DO company, you remember the 3DO, right? And Crystal Dynamics, with Universal ultimately winning due to promising to fund an additional 3 games for them, as well as give them full creative freedom over them. And the rest was history. For their new game, Naughty Dog wanted to make a game with a 3D perspective where the player is constantly looking at the character's backside as they go, and when trying to decide what system to develop the game for, they decided that all the systems at the time, the 3DO, Atari Jaguar, Sega 32X, and Sega Saturn, had poor sales and wouldn't be able to properly handle it. And with the Nintendo 64 just being a rumor at the time, the team decided to go with the Sony PlayStation, noting that Sony didn't yet have any mascot characters like Sega's Sonic or Nintendo's Mario. After signing a development agreement with Sony and being given $1.5 million as a development budget, Crash Bandicoot became the 30th game to be developed for the PlayStation. For the design of Crash, Naughty Dog wanted to use an obscure mammal similar to Sonic the Hedgehog, with them eventually settling on a bandicoot. But everything wasn't as smooth as it seemed. Although Naughty Dog were the ones developing the game, not all was good between them and Universal. Universal tried to force them to make Crash's name to Wuzzles the Wombat, which they gave up when Naughty Dog said they would quit if they didn't let them keep the Crash Bandicoot name. They also tried to downplay Naughty Dog's involvement and make it seem like they were mainly the ones responsible for creating Crash, even telling Naughty Dog that they were banned from going to E3 in 1996, RIP E3, so they could leak box art of the game that didn't feature Naughty Dog's name on it, which was in definite violation of their agreement. In response to this, Jason Rubin, the co-founder of Naughty Dog, handed out flyers in front of Crash's E3 booth saying in big bold letters, "Naughty Dog, creators and developers of Crash Bandicoot." By the way, when Sony first saw Crash Bandicoot about 2 or 3 months before the E3 show that year, Super Mario 64 was unveiled around that time, and wanting a mascot character for themselves to compete against it, Sony actually booted Twisted Metal from their booth in lieu of Crash Bandicoot. And after 18 months in development, Crash Bandicoot was released in America on September 9th of 1996, and in Europe on November 8th of that same year, with it also being released in Japan on December 9th of that year, with some mild changes, like making Crash look a little bit less aggressive, the gameplay being a little bit easier with slower and bigger platforms, as well as making it so at the end of every level, no matter how many boxes you missed, Crash only gets hit with one, because Japanese children found him getting hit with boxes disturbing. The original Crash 1 came out back when I was at the prime age of 4. I was even younger than I was in this photo. The first time I ever played a Crash game was when I was about 7, playing my half-brother's copy of Crash Bandicoot 2 at his mother's house, which he'd actually later on give me as a birthday gift, and was actually my first PlayStation game in general. I actually wouldn't go on to play Crash Bandicoot 1 until the Sane Trilogy more than 20 years later. The story for this game is pretty simple. There's an evil scientist called Cortex who's basically mutating animals with a device called the Evolvo Ray to create an army to conquer the world, and he would then brainwash them with a secondary device called the Cortex Vortex. After he puts a Bandicoot through the Evolvo Ray, which creates Crash, he decides that Crash will become the general of his army. Unfortunately though, the Cortex Vortex rejects him, and Crash ends up escaping through a window of the castle. After Crash gets away, Cortex deems him a failure and decides to make his girlfriend Tawna the next test subject, leaving Crash to work his way back to the castle while fighting the other test subjects to rescue his girlfriend and thwart Cortex's plans. The gameplay for Crash 1 is really simple. You run, jump, and spin as you make your way to the end of each platforming level. There's no crouch, no slide, no super jump, and no body slam. Compared to the later entries, this one is pretty bare bones. Crash doesn't even have his signature dance in this game. Although, make no mistake, this game actually was pushing the PS1's capabilities. To add extra replayability to the game, you have an added challenge of breaking every box throughout each level, with this happening whenever you miss a lot. There are also bonus levels throughout the game as well, but compared to later entries in the franchise, you have to basically earn the right to do the bonus stages in this game by finding 3 Tawna, Cortex, or Embryo icons located throughout the level, which are typically hidden in the boxes. Also, unlike later entries that let you freely choose the level that you play, this game was very linear, forcing you to play only one level at a time, and after about every 5 stages, you end up encountering a boss, which are actually pretty fun to fight. Although, I found the last fight against Cortex to be really lackluster, especially since when you fight Embryo in the boss fight before him, he has this transformation towards the end, changing up the fight halfway through. With Cortex, you just dodge his attacks and wait for him to shoot certain bullets at you so you can spin them back at him. But ultimately, a lot of these guys were never really reused again in the later trilogy games, not counting Ripperoo. Although with Pinstripe Pootaroo... What's a Pootaroo? Although with Pinstripe Pootaroo and Tawna, I can see why they were never reused again with the whole family-friendly image Naughty Dog was going for after this game. Did you know that Tawna was actually based on Pamela Anderson? And fun fact, Tiny the Tiger and the Komodo brothers were actually supposed to be in this game, with Tiny getting replaced by Koala Kong, and the Komodo brothers just straight up getting cut from the game. They would eventually see their day in the sun in Crash 2. Now, between the original Crash 1 and the Sane Trilogy, there are a range of changes, so I'm not going to go over all of them, but just the biggest ones that I personally noticed. This is mainly just an issue I had since I played the Sane Trilogy version of the game, but Crash's hitbox was slightly off since he used the Crash 3 version for the physics for all 3 games, meaning for Crash 1, the game was a little bit less forgiving, and you had to be more precise with your jumps, or else this would tend to happen. You can see here that I jumped and basically slipped off of the platform. But if this were the actual original version of the game, I would have made that jump. It didn't really affect me too bad besides this level and the one with the bridge, but something that I actually really liked that they did with the Sane Trilogy was make Coco playable throughout all 3 games, and they even gave her a canon reason for it. Now, in Crash 3, it had a lot to do with time travel, and by the end, Crash and Coco had access to a time machine. So, the in-game reason is that Coco fixed up the time machine and went back in time to help her big brother out. And, at least in Crash 1 anyway, Coco can't even fight any of the bosses, which I think makes for a better in-game story canon. Like, you could always think to yourself, so as not to mess with the time stream, Coco can't beat the bosses at Crash fights. But I will admit, when I was a kid playing Crash 2, I always wanted to play as Coco, so of course I ran through every game as her. They also added the time trials to this game, which wasn't in the original one. And here's one of the biggest things that I think was done. In the original game, Naughty Dog created a level called Stormy Ascent, but at the 11th hour before release, they figured it would be too hard for most players. They didn't have the time to remove the level from the game, because they were afraid if they removed that level from the game it might break something somewhere else, and they had to get the final product to Sony for publishing. So what they did was they basically sealed it off in the disc, making it inaccessible for players, and then handed over the final product to Sony to be published. Meaning that every copy of Crash 1, by default, has the level Stormy Ascent in it, but sealed off. And the only way to play it at the time was to get an action replay to hack the game's files. That is, until the Sane Trilogy, where Vicarious Visions, the people that produced it, made it available to everyone to play in some free DLC. And personally, I think Naughty Dog was right. That level was way too hard. After Crash 1 came out, it was, surprise surprise, a success, selling over 1 million units worldwide in 1996, and it also solidified Naughty Dog's reputation. Naughty Dog would later go on to create 2 more sequels to Crash 1, and even create a racing spin-off called Crash Team Racing, before signing on with Sony and moving on to a new franchise called Jak and Daxter. As for Crash, after the deal between Universal and Sony ended in 2000, there were multiple other games made for him over the years by different developers that received mixed reviews, with the original trilogy getting a remake for his 20th anniversary, with him even getting an official Crash 4 made in 2020. And now, apparently, he's even confirmed to be getting an official Netflix cartoon. Now, I never played the original Crash Bandicoot when I was a kid, or at all, but replaying the remake after playing Crash 4 has shown me that I'm a little bit spoiled with the yellow circle under the character's feet. It really helped me out more than I imagined with platforming. And speaking of spoiled, I'm completely spoiled when it comes to the live system. I can't remember the last time I've ever played a game where you had lives. Despite how bare bones this game may seem nowadays, and compared to its sequels, I like how there's still a lot of replayability behind it. This game is still actually a lot of fun, and I'd sooner come back to this game than I would Crash 4. I kinda wish there was a mode where you can get rid of the lives and switch to checkpoints, but we can't be too spoiled now. I also didn't mind the hitbox issue too much. It really only truly affected me for about maybe 3 levels of the game, and that's more the remake's fault, not the original game's. In conclusion, I think this game leaves a huge legacy in the world of gaming, and even after over 20 years, people today still know who Crash Bandicoot is. And after all this time, Crash 1 is still a lot of fun to play. And I can't wait to get my hands on Crash 2 and start talking about it. And those are my thoughts on Crash 1. I actually had so much fun making this video, and there's just so much interesting history about this game that I couldn't fully dive into without this video blowing up to over 40 minutes. Now, normally I also would have talked about the graphics and music of the game, but I skipped over that this time around since I was playing the remake, not the original. If I ever decide to make a video using the original PS1 version of Crash, I'll be sure to include everything I had to cut out for this one. But, did you agree with me? Did you disagree? What are your favorite memories with Crash 1? Let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you. And, until then, I'll see you all next time for Crash Bandicoot 2. Thanks so much for watching.